Welcome to Rogers TV and Service Georgina. I'm Mayor Margaret Quirk, and we have a series of shows planned for you to go through the various departments, programs and services offered by the town of Georgina to give you some insight and answer some of your questions as to the operations of the town. Today on the show we're going to have two topics. We're going to talk first about fire safety, and then we're going to talk about building permits. So our first guest is our Fire Chief, Ron Jenkins. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you've been fire chief here since, I think, 2015?
2015.
And a volunteer with the town of Georgina since
1992.
And how long have you been in the fire services?
38 years.
So you were 12 when you joined,
I was 12
right?
when I started, yes.
Young when you started. Yes. Congratulations on a great career, and certainly we're fortunate to have your skill set here at the town. What do you see as some of the biggest changes that's happened in fire services over that 38-year career?
Oh, that's a question that we could go into great detail on.
We only have a short time.
I know we only have a short time. There's been numerous changes, and also maybe start off with our protective gear. If I think back to when I started, I was wearing really just a glorified raincoat, and a helmet really was just a plastic, not much better than a toy helmet at the time, one could say. Now we're fully encapsulated with bunker gear, bunker boots, or helmets of high quality, SCBA or self-contained breathing apparatus. When I started, the crews that first went into a fire did not wear that.
That's amazing now when you think of it.
It truly is amazing. They'd go in and get as far as they could,
wow.
And then the crew would come in with the SCBA on or breathing apparatus, and then they would take over for the hose crew. Obviously, that was was very dangerous, and it's caused a lot of occupational disease.
It's down the road, yes, it has. So what about some of the, in terms of fires themselves?
So fires themselves, and in the fire service, we like to say fires have changed. And that's true, but really what's changed is the buildings. In 1975 to the 80s, the average size of a home was just over 1,000 square feet. Today, that same home is about 2,500, if not larger.
So bigger homes, yes.
So bigger homes. If you can remember back, I know growing up, we had the living room, dining room, kitchen, everything was compartmentalized. Now we want open space.
Right.
I know when I moved, the house I moved into, the first thing I did and renovated was open up.
Open concept.
Open concept. That's great for a living space, not great from a fire perspective.
You know, I never thought of that, but it's very true.
It's more air volume, more fire growth. We've got larger space, so what do? We fill it up with furniture.
Stuff.
We fill it up with stuff. Furniture 20, 30 years ago was made of natural material. Now it's all synthetics. Something we call in the fire service comfortable gasoline.
Oh, geez.
And it's really true. The fires have changed so much. They're stronger, they're faster, and they're hotter. And it really makes, when a fire occurs, we really do just have seconds to get out.
And you like to think that things have changed for the positive in terms of, building construction, but it sounds like in some cases the opposite's true. So the fires happen so fast, and I think you've showed me some videos, and I think we saw a video over Christmas that showed a Christmas tree. Maybe just touch on how that's changed in terms of how fast fires can move.
So over Christmas, I think it was north of Barrie. And of course at Christmas time, all the fire services put out Christmas messaging about fire safety and trees. There was some video that was captured and was played on CTV that we'll probably put a link to on our website. And even for myself with 38 years, knowing how fast fires spread, this was very dramatic. The homeowner had a security camera inside his house. They had a Christmas tree in their living room. You could hear, I think it was the child in the house scream that there was a fire. The fire started at the top foot and a half of the Christmas tree. The homeowner was there, the father, he grabs the tree, wrestles it out the front door, which was right there. They get it outside.
I saw the video, I saw it on the news.
Yeah, very dramatic. It was 46 seconds between when that fire started to when he got the tree out the door. The tree obviously was totally consumed and involved in fire at that point. And they got out on the deck, and then subsequently the deck caught fire. The homeowner then tries to extinguish it with a fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher malfunctioned, and he was back to the bucket brigade.
Bucket brigade of throwing water
putting water on it. What's very concerning is had that fire occurred, had somebody left their lights on, and I'm assuming, I don't know for certain what caused the fire, but had they had their lights on, if that was the cause and that occurred at night,
Or even while they were in another room preparing dinner, or
it could have had tragic consequences.
So when a smoke detector goes off, maybe tell us the time it takes for that smoke detector to go off, and the reaction time then to get the fire out.
So there's a number of things happen when a fire occurs. First of all, there has to be an ignition source. There has to be a material to be ignited. So when that ignites, obviously then you have a fire. That fire then has to grow to the point that the alarm goes off. That can be anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes, depending on or longer, depending on where that detector is.
Well, and depending again on the size of your home. If your detectors, by law, you have to have a detector on
every story and outside your sleeping area.
But we don't know where the fire could start at times
either. We
either.
don't know where the fire starts, so there's that growth period of the fire. 17 years ago, or actually longer than 17 years ago, a fire would flash over, what we call flash over, when everything in that room would erupt in flame, and chance of survival is minimal, if non-existent.
And how long was that at that time?
That was probably 17 minutes.
17 minutes.
In today's fire, with the materials that we have, the open concept, the new building materials, it's really about 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes.
And think about what I just said prior, that it takes about a minute to 2 minutes for that smoke alarm to go off. You really do just have seconds
to react and get out.
And that video clip from CTV News really does show that.
And I think you've got some other videos that you've shown me in the past where it shows the building materials of the past, the old couch and drapery that was, like I say, natural, whether it was wool or cotton, and now with the synthetics, how fast that happens. And it's dramatic
It's very dramatic. And then there's the construction methods as well. We used to have legacy lumber, 2x12, 2x6. Now it's engineered lumber. It's in some cases in a basement in residential, it's not protected, so it burns through rather quickly. So when we arrive as a fire service and we're going in to extinguish that fire and in many cases attempt rescue, we need more resources. We're entering a far dangerous situation
by the time you get there, because if it's flash over in a couple minutes, if you haven't got that 911 call, it takes time to mobilize, the trucks out there.
There's been a lot of science in the past 20 years that have been put to firefighting, fire extinguishment, and tactics. And a lot of what was passed down through the myth of firefighting has been proven that there's better methods of doing it. But the occupation itself is a great occupation. I've been doing it for 30 years, but it's become a very dangerous occupation at times as well.
Yeah. So. What would you suggest people do to try to lessen that risk in terms of smoke detectors, safety plans, those type of things?
So as we mentioned, they require a smoke alarm on each floor and outside your sleeping quarters. And really, what you really got to think of is how fast do you want to be alerted to that fire?
How soon do you want to know?
Yes, that's the minimal standard. When grew up, my boys were growing up, I had smoke alarms in their rooms. I had smoke alarms on each floor, in the basement.
Right.
I want to know because from my perspective, I know how fast fire grows.
Yes.
I want to know that there's protection in those areas.
The sooner you know about it, the sooner you can enact that fire safety plan. So how should a family, if they're not sure how to develop a fire safety plan, what can they do?
By all means, reach out, contact our fire department, or if you live outside our municipality, the fire department within your municipality. We're more than happy to share how to create that fire plan, have a plan, have a meeting place,
right,
and get out as fast as you can. Don't try grabbing belongings.
Don't grab the family photo album. It's like get yourself. You don't have time. Get yourself out and get calling to 911 and get the fire department there as soon as possible.
Yeah, and if I just add to that, carbon monoxide is
I was going to say the CO2 detectors. Yeah,
it's always been a bit of an issue, especially now we're in the heating season within the year. We continually respond to carbon monoxide alarms. Sometimes it's due to a faulty battery. We'd rather go and find that out.
Right.
Because carbon monoxide is tasteless, colorless, odorless.
Yeah, the silent killer. So that's why you need those CO2 detectors. Now, you've mentioned that fire services have changed. What else has changed in terms of the role of the fire department in the community?
We've really become an all hazards agency. We don't respond just to fires. Obviously, as you know, Mayor, we respond to car accidents, hazardous materials responses,
train derailments, ice storms,
technical rescues.
Yes.
There's not much that we do not respond to.
Right. And education is also a prime function now with the fire services.
Public education has always been one of our roles, one of our more important roles. We want to prevent that fire before it starts. We want to educate people what to do should a fire occur or how they can prevent it.
Right. Now we have a new fire hall under construction in Perphala, and I've talked with other staff earlier in other shows. We've talked about it being a capital project, how we're going to fund it. Maybe you can talk to us a bit about why there was a need for a new fire hall in Pefferlaw.
The previous fire hall, which is now gone, and the foundation and walls are starting to come up for the new fire hall, and we're very proud and excited about the building of that fire hall. The previous one was far, it had lived its life. It was 60 years old. As fires have changed, they've gotten hotter, faster. Our apparatus and equipment need to deal with that as well. So we need bigger trucks, so we need halls that can have the capacity to hold those trucks.
Because I know certainly anybody going into the old Pefferlaw Hall, the truck barely fit in. It did fit, it barely fit in, but maybe tell us a bit about the concerns of the equipment and the safety of the firefighters.
The previous hall was very, very, very tight, as you stated, Mayor, that the wall was about a foot from the truck. The personnel's gear was beside the truck. You got dressed beside the truck as the truck was pulling out. The health and safety hazards were immense there. Things have changed.
Yes.
As well as the diesel exhaust emissions, which we know now is a carcinogen. We had no way of capturing them and exhausting them in that hall. So its time has come. It served its purpose.
And to give more ability for training facilities because even though Pefferlaw is a volunteer force, the volunteer firefighters fight the same type of fires and do the same type of rescues that the full-time firefighters. We have to meet the same standards. Volunteers have to meet the same standards as a career firefighter. When we respond to the fire scene, whether you be a volunteer or a career, the fire doesn't know the difference. The fire doesn't know a difference. Yeah. So that's something. Now, when it comes to the equipment itself, what complement do we have now with our fire department? We have pumper trucks, but didn't we buy a new sort of multi-purpose truck in the last couple of years? So our tankers, we've switched our tankers to a multi-purpose pumper tanker. That's been a great benefit to us. Our call volume continually goes up in Georgina each year, and when that happens, we get simultaneous calls. So now we have a tanker that could be out and responding back from a fire, but it's also equipped as a pumper and can respond as a pumper. Yeah, and that's good, because I know the other thing we have in this year's budget, and we've had in previous budgets, is the replacement of the bunker gear. And I think we want to have 2 sets of equipment for each firefighter. 2 sets of equipment. Again, through science, we've realized that a lot of those carcinogens stay in our bunker gear. It has to be laundered. When that gear is being laundered, it's now out of service, so we need another set of gear to replace that gear. Great. Well, thank you very much. We've learned a lot about the fire services here, and I hope the residents, if you have questions about fire safety plans, contact the fire department. They'd be happy to assist you. We're going to go for a break. I'm Mayor Margaret Quirk, and this is Service Georgina on Rogers TV. We'll see you when we get back. Welcome back to Rogers TV and Service Georgina. I'm Mayor Margaret Quirk, and joining me for the second segment of today's show is the building official, Chief Building Official Rod Larmer. Welcome, Rod.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. I get asked a lot of times about building permits, and they are a complicated process and can be frustrating for people. What advice can you give people when they're considering building on an addition or a new home or a accessory garage?
Yeah, there's a lot to applying for a building permit. There's Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority approvals. There could be some entrance permits to connect. If you're building an addition on a house or a small garage, there might be, there will be site alteration permits that need to be applied for as well. There's zoning information that needs to be collected and confirm that the building is the proper distance from property lines and heights and use and things. So there's a number of things that people need to consider before they, during their design and while they're thinking about what it is they want to build.
So the first time they come to the town, what questions should they be prepared to answer?
Yeah, well,
ask or answer. I mean,
right. Well,
a lot of times they come in asking, what can I, what can I build? Well, they need to have done some research in terms of what they want to build first, I would assume.
Right. So we need to know the address because we need to know that property and identify which zone it's in, so that we can then tell them what they can build, how they can use it, how far it needs to be from property lines. They'll need to find out some of that other applicable law, like Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and what other approvals are required. So we will do up a bit of a checklist for people who have a good idea of what it is they want to do, and sort of send them away with that homework so that they understand exactly what it is they need to collect when they apply for the building permit.
So when they come in, they'll probably talk maybe first to a zoning examiner. Is that what they would, is that sort of the first step through the process?
Generally, the first person that they would meet is one of the application examiners at the counter, who are quite versed in zoning, in the basic zoning of a property, and they're really the first guide that they'll meet in order to understand what the limitations are with what they want to do.
So when they submit their application and their building permit, maybe step us through the process of where it goes through after it gets dropped off at the building department desk.
Yeah, the first step would be once the application is processed at the counter and the permit's paid through Service Georgina, the permit goes into the zoning and applicable law review stream.
Right.
And we've implemented a time frame that we try to get back to applicants in about 2 weeks, in 2 weeks or less.
Or less, yeah.
To make sure that the general design and the general application complies with the zoning bylaw and any of the other applicable laws. After that, it will then enter into the building code stream and be reviewed for the technical sufficiency requirements.
Now, what can slow down those reviews? What slows down the application process? Because people often are concerned about that.
Right. We may find during our review that, for example, the house might have been too close to the property line, or perhaps an addition or something might not quite comply with the zoning bylaw. If that occurs, then there's a couple of options available. They may want to revise their application.
Right, scale things back, change the design.
That's right. They may have to, they may want to seek a planning approval to have the zoning
change, or they could go through, there's the minor variance process as well through the planning department.
That's right.
That allows for those minor changes in for example, a setback.
That's right,
so
exactly.
They may have to do that. So that can slow things down, because then they have to go through that process. And there's fees attached to these processes as well. So I know some people are concerned about that, but it's a cost of doing business in terms of a user fee. So we just did a review recently on the building permit fees and structured them in such a way to try to be fair to all the users and to all the residents. So maybe was there concerns that you had in terms of the last time we had done a review and the new fees are in place?
Right. Well, our fees are based on a 100% cost recovery model, so that the applicant who's applying to build their deck or their addition pays for the full cost of the services that are involved in the review and
right, and that
inspections.
includes the staff time to do those reviews. It's not simply just the building inspection when they actually go out and inspect.
That's
it's
right.
the cost associated with reviewing the zoning examiner, the legislative requirements, so it's cost recovery.
That's right.
Now, we've done some recent changes up on the third floor with the Customer Service Hub. Maybe tell us a bit about how that's changed to try to improve the process for the residents.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind summer for sure.
Yes.
It's been the last few months that we've been doing a lot of reorganization throughout the Civic Center to...
A lot of people shifting around. It's like find Waldo. Where's Waldo? I don't know where staff are at times.
That's right. We had development engineering join the development services department several months ago. And so we wanted to bring them up to the third floor because
it made sense.
The three, planning, development, engineering, and building, were quite close together. Applicants who come to our counter are often involved with the planning and the development engineering processes as well. So it's nice that now we have one floor people come to and they can get most of their business done.
So there's two separate service hubs. There's the one for development and there's one for building, I understand.
That's right. The building counter, now we take in, obviously, the building permits, but we've also started taking in the site alteration and the plot plan review permits for the development engineering department.
Oh, okay.
Again, giving the customer just one counter that they have to come to visit.
So that one-stop shop where they can come and get answers and be able to leave, like I said, oftentimes with a checklist of things that they need to either prepare before they put their building application in, or to know what the next, once they get that done. I think that's, for a lot of people, they've never done this before. They've never put an addition on their home. They've never put that accessory garage up, so it's all new to them. And do staff sit down and really explain the process with them? Is that something that, if they have questions, are they?
Yeah, I would invite people, if they have access to the internet, to take a look at our webpage. We have quite a bit of information on our webpage with types of drawings that they need to prepare.
Right.
That is one of the things that can slow down a process is the quality of drawings.
Right.
So we want as much information
Sometimes
as possible.
sketched out on a napkin really doesn't quite cut it.
Right.
And you need to, sometimes you need those engineered drawings, again, depending on what the project is.
Yeah, and those are things that hopefully we can capture when people are doing their first investigative research. The type of building where we might be able to guide them with some of those types of solutions.
So what happens if building occurs and you didn't get a permit? What happens if you build without a permit?
Well, if you build without a permit, I would want to start off by saying the best advice I can give is always assume
that everything needs a permit.
Whatever you're doing needs a permit. If you're not sure, give us a call,
right,
because that's what we're here for, to give that information. If we do become aware of somebody having built without a permit, then we'll send an inspector to the site to do a bit of investigation, try to contact the homeowner, find out exactly what is happening. It might result in a notice being issued and giving some direction. Then the next step after that is really back into that building permit stream and trying to get the person redirected to visit our counter.
So that's when maybe they're starting to build something. What if I buy a property and I didn't realize that there weren't building permits issued for a new garage? What would happen at that point? What's with the property information reports?
Well, property information reports are intended to capture all of the records that we have on file, and most often people are interested to find out if we have any active complaint
right,
files, active building permits, any other issues that might be of interest to somebody who has some interest in a property.
Okay, because I know there's been times where people have bought properties, something had been done without a permit, and now they're left sort of having to deal with getting into compliance. Right.
Quite often we will see somebody ask for a property information report and also have some title insurance. Mm-hmm. They work together, but people still need to be self-aware and educate themselves on what records we have active. And
exactly. So now some of the permits that we're going to get into probably in the next few months of the building department are deck permits, pool permits. What can you tell me about those permits?
Yeah, deck, the spring is the time when people start to get ready to do those types of projects. Mm-hmm. We try to get those pushed through a little bit quicker. They're generally sometimes easier, but sometimes when homeowners are doing their own drawings, then we get into some difficulties in reviewing to make sure that all of the information is captured. And it's really the same process as before. We were talking about visiting the counter, asking the questions. We have deck packages that we can help guide homeowners through the process.
Because I know I see on social media at times people asking other people, so what's the process for getting a pool installed? I'm thinking, why are you asking on a social media group, and you need to come to the town to ask that, because pools are a whole other issue when it comes to some of the pool safety that is out there. So maybe tell us a bit about the building side and pool safety.
Yeah, the pool enclosure bylaw regulates fences and enclosures around pools. So if it's an above ground pool, the wall of the actual pool might suffice as the pool enclosure. If it's an in-ground pool or you choose to fence the yard, then there are certain requirements for the fencing, non-climbable, 4 feet high, and those sorts of things. Pool safety for visitors and neighbors is important, and that's the purpose of that enclosure bylaw.
In terms of liability, if you've don't have a fenced pool area and something happens, you know, the liability issues are huge.
That's right.
So when it comes to the permits and people that have questions about permits, can they make an appointment to sit down with staff, or is it just they just come up to the counter and have that discussion, or what should they do?
Yeah, they can just come into into the third floor building counter and ask their questions. There's no need to make an appointment or call it in advance. If somebody wishes to call, we invite email, phone calls. Again, I encourage people to take a look at our webpage, get themselves familiar with the processes, and then educate themselves before they ask those questions.
Because it's something that, again, a lot of people, you know, you hear the weekend warriors, the decks going up, and a lot of misinformation out there in terms of what people need a permit for, what they don't need a permit for. So I like your idea of just assume everything needs a permit. Sometimes renovating your bathroom doesn't need a permit if you're, you know, in certain situations. Other times it might. So I guess what I'm trying to say is every situation can be different.
That's right.
And asking your neighbor what they did isn't probably the best way to get the right information.
That's right. A quick phone call
is the best
and
thing
you
to
can
do.
get your answers.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. It's been Service Georgina here on Rogers TV. I'm Mayor Margaret Quirk, and we've had a discussion with our Chief Building Official, Rod Lommer, about building permits. If you have any questions, the staff are there to answer them. Thank you for joining me.